I've made the final boss. I mean, there may be some extra tweaks or something put into it, but I want to show that off. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. I'm going to play against the final boss, and then I'll get into the code of how I made the final boss. I'm putting it out there right now, spoiler warning. If you don't want to have the final boss spoiled for you just yet, now's your chance to back out, wait until you've played the game, and then come back to find out how it was coded. Hey everybody, welcome to day 24 of the Rogue Tanks devlog. I'm going to start on the final boss level, and I'm going to start with like extra stats and stuff so it's easier for me. Here we go. So the first form here is just kind of like the Lob Tank boss. It's got a higher firing rate, and the actual bullets are also bigger. There's also this fence here that's in the way, so I can't like just go over there and rush him. I have to fight from a distance. There's a barrier right here, but it's not really going to protect me at all right now from what that boss is. Oh, ignore the white numbers here. This is just for testing that I had. This is phase 2. He's just gonna spread fire shot everywhere. So far I've found it's actually better to rush him in this case, even though it's kind of scary. He does have a limited number of shots, so we can't just endlessly shoot that out. The third phase is missiles. The goal here is you can't really take your time to shoot all the missiles down, so instead you got to avoid them. As they hit each other, they will, diminish and destroy each other's power. So you kind of want to avoid the missiles mainly, and try to shoot at the boss while it's moving around as well. Whoa, right in my face. And then now that he's done with that phase, I can shoot that missile that's chasing me. Okay, and then this is the fourth phase, which is just like a regular tank, but it's got huge bullets that I cannot like power through. Like I can't just shoot through those bullets. They can take a lot of damage because they have a lot of power. So I mainly want to focus on trying to get around those bullets. I can't, waste all my shots because I've got some bounce, and if I don't use my shots carefully, then I won't even hit them. So yeah, I just gotta avoid all the other bullets, which will continually bounce around, and that is what I have so far. I kind of want to keep it short enough because I want to have like an achievement for beating the campaign within a certain amount of time, and if the final boss is too long, then that becomes just so impossible. Let's check out the records. So I've got normal victory for beating the campaign with a normal tank, and records, you can see I've got 2 campaigns won, fewest shots, 305 just on one boss. That's kind of a lot. Least damage 6. I took 6 hits in that fight, so I was not playing with my A game. And then fastest time is here, 1:03, which is totally not something reasonable to do after playing through the other levels. So as for the final boss, how it's coded, I did have to give it a few extra variables, this phase and this transition. This phase obviously is going to be used to determine what kind of a tank it is, and then the transition, it's just kind of meant to make the enemy pause in place for a while. It does that glowy stuff on it, and it gives the player time to recognize that the boss is transforming, and they can like take care of any stray bullets that the enemy threw out, that they can focus on those instead of focusing on the boss. They can recognize that the boss isn't fighting back at the moment. So back in here, this is the step event. I added transition is equal to 0. If the boss is in the middle of transitioning, it won't do any of the following stuff. These are common direction finding things that every enemy tank has. But here I have this switch, and the switch is for the phase. Each case of this switch copied over like the mini boss for the Lob Tank. I basically just like copied over this code, not entirely, but for the most part, copied it over and threw it into this switch case for the phase. So it'll act like the Lob Tank, and that's like determining how it shoots, what kind of bullets it throws out. And then I have in the armor section, when it normally takes damage, when the first phase is defeated, I have this effect, and it removes then the fences. So if instance exists, object fence, destroy object fence, and both types of fences. So that's when I remove that fence that's in the middle of the room. And then I change the boss's stats, like the bullet power, reload time, bullet speed. I change those things right here to prepare for the next phase. And then I have transition equal 3 seconds, And if we go down to the bottom, we can see what the transition does. Transition greater than 0. CRGB, that is used for the coloring. The boss turns to a white tank while it's transitioning, where any time it's actually active, it's like going through like a color change through like normal colors. I've got these two variables to pick just like random spots, -40 and +40 around the boss, so that I can create this effect basically at random spots around the boss that cover it up while it's doing its transition. Negative transition by the game speed per frame, and then if transition gets to 0 or less, it should never really be less than 0, but just in case I have that less or equal to, then we transition to the next phase. Armor gets restored to its starting amount. CRGB goes back to 100, that's for the coloring of the boss, I'll show you that. And transition goes back to 0. I guess that's just in case it actually did go below 0, it then becomes 0, because going back to the top, it has to be 0 in order for any of this activity to happen. So then we get to, that's when a break happens, and we go to phase 1, or the second phase of the tank, and it's like the 4-directional turret tank. And yeah, again, I copied the code from the mini boss and put it in here, so it will basically act like that tank, but the stats of this final boss tank are much better than the mini bosses were, so it's going to be a lot tougher to handle. Again, when armor gets to 0, I basically just set up for the next tank, which is the missile tank, giving it different stats. Here we go with the next case for the missile tank. In here, when this tank reaches 0, I have this other thing happen. I have 2 flare effects, which happen over the 2 barriers at the start of the match, are then removed, so there are no obstacles in the entire room. It's just a completely open room at this point for the final phase of the boss, where he's shooting those large bullets at you that bounce off the walls. The final tank, which is, I guess I just call it the power tank. This tank copied the code over, so it'll act like a regular power tank. And then this is the one where when armor reaches 0, it actually destroys the boss. So then the drawing, the color is 0 and CRGB is 100. Color is adding plus 0.5. This is similar to these walls, which add color plus 0.1. So basically this is just a faster transition running through like all the colors of the rainbow. And I did that intentionally because I don't want it to stay the same color as the walls. I want it to stand out more. So I just have it go through all those colors faster. If color gets over 255, then reset back to 0, and then image blend, yada yada yada. This is if transition is 0, meaning it's fighting. Where if it's not 0, meaning it's mid-transition, then image blend is this color RGB instead of HSV, which only requires one value to change in order to make the color change. This I have CRGB because it's just easier to control to make it all white, where I just gradually change all the color values. It essentially goes to gray, being at 100, and then gradually changes to white over like a couple seconds while it's doing its transition. And it affects the main tank and then all the different turrets that it could have based on what phase it's in. And again, these draw codes are taken from the individual boss tanks, which I've gone over more in detail in previous episodes. So that pretty much took all my day. I did a lot of testing, trying to get what I thought were good stats for each phase to make it like a good challenge. I still need to add like a stats screen, because you beat the game, I gotta show you what your stats are, you know, instead of just going straight back to the title screen. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but I'm getting there, close to the end, I feel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.